So many of the houses here are actually wood, not concrete. Now, the problem with basement apartments is that if you're living in a basement apartment where there are kids in the main house, you are finished. Hello, welcome to my channel. It's Kosi here again. How are you? Thank you for stopping by. If you're a new subscriber, hey, welcome to the party. I'm so happy to have you. Thank you for deciding to join the community. We've been waiting for you. So good to have you here. And if you're an OG, a returning subscriber, hey, what's up? What do you do? I hope you've been keeping safe since my last upload or since the last video that you watched. Today's video is a continuation of the series Newcomer in Canada, and as some of you already know, I use this platform to share my Newcomer in Canada experience because I just moved to Canada a few months ago, and I feel like this experience is first-hand information and might be helpful to people who are also newcomers to Canada or are planning to move to Canada very soon. Now, I've made reference to living in a basement apartment in my previous videos, and I usually tell you that living in basement is not the most convenient thing ever. So in today's video, I'll be talking to you about the pros and cons of living in a basement. So are you interested in knowing how we've been coping living in a basement? Then don't go anywhere and I'll get into the story in a bit. And before we get into that, I'd like to talk to you about a few things. If you're a newcomer in Canada, there are several platforms that you can explore in finding accommodation options. Number one is Facebook Marketplace. So as the name implies, Facebook Marketplace is a marketplace. People sell several things, from furniture to cars to real estate. So Facebook Marketplace is a very safe option for many newcomers in Canada. So I realized also that before I arrived in Canada, I didn't have access to Facebook Marketplace on my app. And when I arrived in Canada, a few days or few weeks later, my app updated and I had access to Facebook Marketplace. So if you're currently not in Canada and you don't have access to Facebook Marketplace, not to worry, when you arrive, you'll be able to access it. Number two option is Kijiji.ca. So just the way Facebook Marketplace works is the same way Kijiji works. So there are several things on Kijiji, even cars, real estate, furnishing. Third is RentFaster. So RentFaster is basically for houses only. If you're looking for a place to stay, you can also check on RentFaster, and it's going to give you several options. You go ahead, you inspect, and then decide if you want to take it or not. And the last and not the least is word of mouth. Guys, don't sleep on word of mouth. Let people know out there that you're looking for a house. Let them know the kind of things that you're looking for, because a friend or a family might know someone who knows someone that lives in a place that's currently free that might suit what you're looking for. You never know. So let people know as well, because word of mouth can also be very helpful. I'm going to leave all of the lists right here so you can decide which option works best for you. Having said all of that, other things that I think you need to take note of is number one, the rent here is being paid by the month. So you pay your rent every month in advance. Number two is that when you finally find somewhere that you like, you might have to pay double of the rent when you're moving in. So the second part of the rent is usually referred to as security deposits. The idea is that the owner of the house would use that security deposit to take care of any damages that may happen while you're living in the house. Another thing is that you're expected to actually sign a lease. So when we move into our basement apartment, we have to sign a lease for 6 months. So what that means is that within those 6 months, you cannot just up and leave. Now let's go into the details. What is a basement apartment? So a basement apartment is that apartment that is attached to a townhouse. So if you see a townhouse, many of them usually have like a basement apartment, usually underground, below the ground level, or at the back of the house, at the backyard. Now, for a basement apartment, sometimes you might have to access the basement apartment through the main entrance of the house. Another option is a walk-in basement. So many of these basements are built in a way that there's a different entrance from the main entrance, usually by the side of the house or at the back of the house. Another thing about basement apartments is that there are some basement apartments that they usually refer to as daylight basements. So those kind of basements are usually not the ones underground, because the ones underground usually have like very short windows, but the daylight basements have like full windows from top to bottom, which allows for more light and more air circulation in the basement apartment. So all the points I'm going to talk to you about now doesn't apply to all basement apartments, but it applies to some or to most of them. So the first advantage of living in a basement apartment is a community life. So most basement apartments, like I already mentioned, are attached to a townhouse, and many of these townhouses are usually in nice communities, nice neighborhood, nice environment that are usually family friendly. Number two is the price. The price is usually a lot cheaper than other apartments, and the funny thing is that you can actually negotiate. For our own house, we were able to negotiate with the owner of the house, and he was able to give us $100 off the rent that was initially stated on Kijiji. Also, the rent is usually all inclusive, so we don't have to worry about how much gas we use or how much heat we are consuming or how much internet we are using in a month, because all of that is contained in the rent. That might not be the case for all basement apartments. Number 3, you don't need a credit history, you don't need an employment letter, you don't need to have a stable job for you to be able to live in a basement apartment. Please don't take my word for it. Make sure you do further research, because some owners of these houses might actually require you to have all of that. And then the 5th thing I noticed is the basement apartment, for the price, relatively have more space. But don't take my word for it again, because some basement apartments might not be as spacious as the others. But on the average, I think basement apartments are usually more spacious. Now to the disadvantages of living in the basement apartment. First disadvantage is this. Like I mentioned already, if you're lucky to find a walk-in basement where you don't have to access through the main house, all fine and good, because having to access through the main house already takes away your privacy. Maybe that's not very safe when it comes to security, because anyone who enters the main house can actually enter your basement apartment. So no matter how security conscious you are, if the owner of the house is not security conscious, then your security is also going to be compromised. Number 2, because basement apartments are underground, they are usually a lot colder. And the annoying thing is that many basement apartments don't have their own heat control separately, so the heat is controlled by the main apartment. And oftentimes when the main apartment sets the heat at a certain level, there are chances that the basement is usually like 4 to 5 degrees or even more colder than what has been set in the main house. So those in the main house might be okay and warm, but those in the basement apartment are usually very, very cold, and it's crazy. So what we usually do is that we make sure that we have a mobile heater, and we take our mobile heater everywhere with us when we are at home, just to help us regulate the heat so that we don't die of cold. Another thing about basement apartments, especially when it's not a daylight basement apartment, is that they're usually a lot darker. I know that darkness can be a little cozy and a lot more homely, but sometimes you just want sunlight. You can see outside that the sun is out and everywhere looks nice and bright, but inside of the house is usually dark. So we have to make sure that we augment the light in the house with artificial light, because it's not every time you want to have so much darkness in the house. So if it is an underground basement, there are chances that the windows are very short and very small. Another thing is that many of these basement apartments usually have like very short ceilings. Like if you're very tall and you raise your hand, you might be able to touch the ceiling. And the problem with that is that if you're someone who usually gets claustrophobic very fast, there are high chances that you will get claustrophobic from time to time if you're living in the basement apartment. The darkness and the shortness of the ceiling is not the most interesting thing to come home to every time. Another thing is that we have a shared mailbox, so you don't have access to your own mails separately. If you're living in a basement apartment, all the mails come to the owner of the house, and then they have to sort the mails and give you which one belongs to you and take which one belongs to them. So sometimes I may have received a mail, but because the owner of the house has not gone to check the mail, I have to constantly remind them, please go check your mail. I have a mail. I'm expecting a delivery, until they go check and then give me what belongs to me. When you're done building a house, the proper bodies or the proper agencies have to come and inspect and make sure that the house meets certain standard, and if it does, they approve of it. Oftentimes these basement apartments, they're not developed by professional developers. Now the problem is that oftentimes when they're done developing the basement, they don't go ahead and apply for approval. Many landlords usually shy away from that, so you have to be very careful to make sure that even if the owner of the house develops his own basement by himself, he should at least do a pretty good job that will make the place safe for you and your family to live in. Now the problem with basement apartments is that if you're living in a basement apartment where there are kids in the main house, you are finished. And let me tell you why. Kids are restless. They want to run up and down, they want to play, they are usually stamping their feet, they are all over the place. They don't sit down one place. In fact, you can even hear conversations from the main house in the basement apartment. Is that bad? Like you want to have siesta sometimes, and that's when the kid in the main house decides that he wants to run all over the place, and you just keep hearing all the noises and all the disturbances, and then you cannot sleep. It can be very annoying. I love kids, but I also want my privacy, and I also want some quiet when I'm in the house. Another thing with basement apartments is parking. Oftentimes, the garages in the main houses can take 2 cars, and people in the main houses usually have at least 2 cars, so you will usually have to park on the street. The problem with parking on the street is winter. So when the winter comes, your car is always going to be covered in snow when it snows. So what that means is that for every time that you need to go out, you have to make sure that you go out a few minutes earlier to dust off all the snow on your car and scrape off all the ice on your glass. That's a problem. Another thing about basement apartments is that oftentimes the mechanical room is located in the basement apartment, just like we have here. So sometimes we hear funny noises in the mechanical room and we're not even sure what's going on. It's a little creepy, trust me, because the mechanical room is just in the next room. It's just a room away from you, and boy, it's not fun. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's video. I have said a whole lot about the pros and the cons of living in a basement apartment, and I'm sharing this with you not necessarily to discourage you from deciding to live in a basement apartment, because like I said, it's a lot cheaper and a lot easier to get access to, but I just want you to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself involved in. And this is first-hand information about the things that we've had to adjust to living in basement apartments in Canada. So if you enjoyed watching the video, do not forget to thumbs up, like the video, do not forget to share because there's love in sharing, and do not forget to subscribe because it is free. Help me build the community so that you know when I have a new upload in the future. And before you go, do not forget to check my other videos about my experiences as a newcomer in Canada. You may also find them interesting. Till my next video, stay safe, take care of yourself, and remember to be kind. Goodbye.